Hello and welcome. According to critics, television in America is not asking the right questions about the war in Iraq, the government, and the issues of civil liberties and national security. Following the attacks of 9/11, patriotism, or at least a belief in what was patriotic, guided the flow of information for many in the USA. Those willing to question and challenge blind belief are far and few between, but they include my guest today. Phil Donahue's show, carrying his name, ran across America for 26 years, and he's credited with being the man who created daytime talk television. In the run-up to the Iraq War in 2002 and since then, Donahue has been vocal in criticizing the American media for skewing to the right and not allowing more liberal voices to break into the mainstream media. He's joining us from New York. We'll get to him in just a moment. But last year, Phil Donahue co-produced and co-directed a documentary about Thomas Young, a young man who enlisted in the US Army immediately after 9/11. He soon realized he'd be sent to Iraq instead of Afghanistan, and 5 days after reaching there, he was shot and paralyzed. Upon returning to the States, Young joined Iraq Veterans Against the War, and Donahue's movie, Body of War, follows his story. Here's an excerpt.
When I made the phone call on September 13th, it was because I saw the pictures of him standing on top of the pile saying that we were going to smoke the evildoers out that did this to us, and we were going to find them in their caves. But if it weren't for this, I wouldn't have joined the Army, which means I wouldn't have gone home on Christmas leave to go to a bar to meet Bree. All that had to happen so I could fly 10,000 miles away to not shoot around because all I saw were women and children running away from gunfire before I took a bullet myself.
A scene there from Body of War. Now don't forget, we take your calls on the show, and you can reach us at the numbers at the bottom of your screen. Well, the film's producer, American talk show legend Phil Donahue, is joining us now from New York. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Riz.
So I've got to start by asking you what made you want to do this documentary and touch in particular on this topic.
Well, I felt that this was a sanitized war, that media had cooperated in not really showing the pain. My motive, or my inspiration for this film, was that picture of the naked child running from the napalm. You remember that,
right,
in Vietnam?
Yes. Very much.
Screaming. You could see the black smoke behind her. That picture that photograph won a Pulitzer Prize, as it should have. See the pain, don't sanitize the war. If you're going to send America's children to war, then the press, I think, has a responsibility to really see the sacrifices that these people are making. And what you see in our film is a drama being played out in thousands of homes across America, occupied by young men and women soldiers who've come home with hideous injuries from this war. Our subject, by the way, is a T4. The bullet went through his spine at the T4 level, which is between the shoulder blades. Thomas is paralyzed from the nipples down. He cannot walk.
I know I saw the film through, Phil, and I have to say that, you know, it's interesting that America has been very reluctant, it seems to many people, to pick up on this subject of what happens to the war veterans when they come back, and the way the war has been covered, as you say. An email that came in from JP in Washington, D.C. I'd like to put to you says, was it frustrating to have to put up your own money to fund the film? Do you feel vindicated now that it's picking up decent reviews?
Well, I don't know if I need vindication. I was against the war, and I was early. I have never said I told you so. I don't think anything good ever comes from that. It's also very self-indulgent, and we've got 4,000 dead American uniform military personnel. I mean, and I'm merely saying that, as with this subject of our film, the American people should see this, see it. Maybe the next time will be less. You know, this president just, a politics of fear got us into this war. I mean, Saddam had this, Saddam had that, Saddam is here, Saddam's outside your bedroom window, he's under your bed, and this president took this nation by the ear and led it right into the sword. If we had obeyed the United States Constitution, this never would have happened.
How do you explain something that Thomas reflects on in the movie, that people started to question his patriotism when he started questioning the war and the decision to go into Iraq?
The right-wing war drum machine was never louder than during the run-up to this war. somehow, and I think it's in the millions, millions of Americans have come to believe that if a president calls a war, you have to salute. If you dissent or protest a president's decision to call a war, you're unpatriotic, you don't support the troops, you don't believe in Jesus. I mean, they go on and on. I mean, the issue of marginalizing the voice in America that seeks diplomacy, a voice that wants to reach out rather than lash out, is largely muted.
There were a lot of senators who were putting their voice behind that decision to go to war, and I want to show our viewers another excerpt from the movie here, where they're urging quick passage.
The threat posed by Iraq grows with each passing day.
Mr. Bai, aye.
It's a danger that grows every day.
Mr. Bennett, aye.
Each day that goes by, he becomes more dangerous, more diabolical.
Every day, Saddam Hussein grows stronger.
His capabilities become better.
Mr. Biden, aye.
Every day, Saddam Hussein builds more chemical and biological weapons.
The longer we wait, the more dangerous he becomes.
Mr. Bond, aye. Mr. Bro, aye. Mr. Brownback, aye. Mr. Bunny, aye. Mr. Byrne, aye. Mr. Campbell, aye. Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Carnahan, Mr. Carper.
Aye. Wait! Slow down. Don't rush this through.
Phil, the theme of the senators voting aye is very cleverly edited throughout the documentary, and Senator Robert Byrd there at the end says wait is one of the few voices who seems to speak out against it. And again, when you think about people who know what's going on behind the scenes, those in power, why were there, do you think, so few voices speaking out against the war?
Because they believed that their constituents wanted this. This is 3 weeks before an election. It's important to remember our emotional condition here in the States back in October 2002, less than a year after 9/11. Well, I would say 13 months. We were mad. We were angry. We wanted to get, many Americans wanted to get somebody. And so it was very difficult to vote no on this war. You were a wimp, you didn't understand, you wanted to sing Kumbaya, while people who really understood the problem stepped up to fight. Robert Byrd was almost alone, pleading with his colleagues. There are, as you may know, 100 members of our Senate, our senior chamber of our bicameral legislature, and only 23 voted against this war. That's how difficult it was to stand up. I mean, the people who voted no, it was a fabulous demonstration of moral courage. By the way, 133 members of the House voted no out of 435. So this measure passed handsomely, no problems. This passed by a wide margin. And it's what you can do if you scare the people.
It's interesting because now with the election coming up in November, everyone's looking back to who said they were for the war and who were against it. It's become part of the rhetoric of the campaigning now. There was another scene from the movie I'd like people to see here where it seems everyone was rallying behind George W. Bush and often regurgitating his rhetoric.
Iraq has trained al-Qaeda members in bomb making.
Saddam Hussein's regime trained al-Qaeda operatives in bomb making.
Saddam is now training al-Qaeda in bomb making.
We know that Iraq and al-Qaeda have had high-level contacts that go back a decade.
Senior level contacts between Iraq and al-Qaeda going back a decade.
The Iraqi regime has been in contact with al-Qaeda for at least a decade.
Saddam Hussein is harboring terrorists.
Harbors these terrorists.
Aid, comfort, and sanctuary to terrorists.
I mean, when you think about it, how different do you think things might have been had Democrats been in power when this was taking place? And how do you think things might change come November and if the Democrats end up in the White House?
Oh dear, I'm flattered that you think I can give you an enlightened answer about the future. You know what? I don't believe the Democrats would invade another country without provocation. This is new. To invade a country that didn't attack us? and as we know now, that never had the ability. I mean, Saddam did not, all these talking points from the White House, a smoking gun will become a mushroom cloud, designed to scare the people. The longer we wait, the more dangerous. We gotta. You know, these are grown men and women, and they're taking the White House talking points and just robotically reading them. This was a shallow bumper sticker debate on whether or not we should go to war. And here we are, 5 years later, 6 years later, over 1 million dead Iraqis, 4,000 American military personnel, how many refugees? You know, if we had obeyed the Constitution, our Constitution does not allow the president to call a war. Only Congress can declare war. Congress didn't do that. Congress said, here, Mr. President, this is our permission if you have to. That way, they're covered if the war doesn't go well. And they're all saying it now. Well, I didn't realize that he said that, don't blame me. And the framers were right. The people who founded our nation were right. It's too much power to give to one man.
We have an interesting email that came in from Sydney, Australia. You've touched on some of the points here, but the first part's the bit I'd like to put to you. I'll read the whole thing through, though. It's from Esanoma in Sydney in Australia. It says, is the anti-war camp as vocal and strong as the anti-war camp against the Vietnam War in the 60s? Do you have any views on why the American public initially supported the war in Iraq and appear to support the continued presence of US troops in Iraq? Do you see any ray of hope for positive changes for the Iraqi people from the presidential candidates, especially the Democrats, on war and in foreign policy in general? It's really the issue of the anti-war movement and how there seemed to be very little impact. Cindy Sheehan, of course, who'd been on the show with me a few times here, was one of the few who got her name out there. Her son Casey was killed in Iraq, but didn't seem to have a lot of impact in changing the views of the majority of Americans.
Well, the Australian who asked that question should know that the vast majority of the American people now believe that the Iraq War was a mistake. So the dissenters are now in the majority. We're going to have to get used to this. This is uncomfortable almost. We've never been in the majority. We're the ones that are supposed to be unpatriotic. The Vietnam War was quite different, as you know. We had a draft. We had a draft during the Vietnam War. So the resistance was larger, had greater impact, was more chaotic, more arrests. Who will forget the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago where the cops and the young people rioted? It was very ugly. This is an all-volunteer army now. And it is true that the drama is not as great, but the marches are getting larger. I was in one coming down 7th Avenue in New York, and there were 1 million people involved. This is over a year ago. So, you know, America has certainly come to the realization that this war was a massive blunder. And now the challenge is to get out. How do we do that? I am confident that either Democratic candidate would move more aggressively than the Republican candidate to pull us back from this war.
We have a call on the line from London. John, what would you like to ask?
Yeah, hello, Riz. I'd just like to ask Phil. Governor Elliot Spitzer slept with a prostitute, was caught, and had to resign virtually immediately. You have a situation where a president misleads a country into war and nothing happens. What does that say about the state of America today?
Well, while you're at it, you might want to know, why did we bring our government to a halt for almost 2 years while we investigated President Clinton's liaison with Monica Lewinsky? I think it bespeaks a certain sexual immaturity myself, if not some Puritanism. We have a lot of false piety here. We have political figures tripping over themselves. God bless this, that, my dog and my cat. Democracy, democracy, hooray for democracy. Less than half of us vote. And the troops, that we deify the troops. Oh, the brave troops, the courageous troops, the wonderful troops, the flower of the youth, of our youth, our best and our brightest troops. And the troops come home, and the Veterans Administration hospital doesn't even call them back. We don't seem to have any time for them after our brave and courageous troops come home. There is hypocrisy here. And until we, the people of this nation, become brave enough to elect people who will reach out rather than lash out, I'm not sure we're ever going to feel safe or be safe.
Anwar's also on the line from London. Anwar, what would you like to ask?
Oh, hello. I quite agree with him. You know, it's in democracy. America says to the world, democracy, democracy. And what sort of democracy does the America want? Because the American people have been against Iraq war in every aspect. And
okay, Anwar, I can see your point, and we've got a very terrible line with you, so I'm going to put it to Phil. What Anwar is asking here is that he's saying, look, America constantly chants this call for democracy, but he's asking what sort of democracy do they want when you have so many people within the country against the war, and yet the war still continues?
Yes. Yes. Well, that's a very, very good question. First of all, it's been very difficult to speak out in the States, and I told you why. I mean, it's just difficult. Nobody wants to be called a wimp, unpatriotic. We don't love the troops. Really, that's what they say about us. We don't love anything about America. That's what you get if you protest any particular movement by our government. You don't find anything about America that you like. Well, we like America better than they do. We believe in the Bill of Rights. Right. We believe a woman's home is her castle. The state should not be walking in there and going through bedroom furniture or reading our email. We shouldn't be keeping people in cages for years and years with no Red Cross, no letters, no phone calls. This is not the America that my parents raised me to pledge my allegiance to. Right. And all I'm doing, along with millions of other people, I am not alone. What we are saying is, come home, America. Come back to the original vision of the framers who gave us the best document we believe. Sorry about this self-indulgence here, but we believe the United States Constitution is one of the fabulous documents to oversee the affairs of a civilization ever. And we want to sell that. We've got so much to sell. We should be doing more talking and less bombing.
Well, Phil, about 20 seconds to go, and I've got to ask you, do you think that the movie about Thomas Young will make a big impact? Do you think it'll change people's minds?
I don't know. I'll tell you this, when people are finished watching this movie, they say two things. They say this film should be shown in every college and university in this nation, meaning the United States. Makes us feel very good. And also the viewer says, oh my God, I've got to do something. So I think we're going to provoke a lot of civic action with our...
Oh, Phil, we just lost your picture there as we're going. Thank you very much for being with us. And Body of War is the film. The next show will be with Mike Batt, the music producer from London. We'll see you next time. Street Talk is coming up next.